An inland body of water larger than the entire country of Ireland was systematically assassinated. It didn't just dry up by accident, And it wasn't the victim of some slow, unstoppable shift in the global climate. No, it was deliberately and violently erased from the map by human engineering.
1960. The wind in the bustling port of Muynak tastes of salt and reeds. A fisherman stands on the deck of a wooden trawler, his calloused hands feeding a heavy net into waters so vast the far shore just vanishes into the haze. Below him swim 24 different species of fish, stuff like sturgeon and pike, that have thrived here since literally the last ice age. On the shore behind him, canneries are clattering at full tilt, packing these massive hauls of fresh catch into ice for trains bound straight from Moscow and Leningrad.
Okay, let's dive into this and jump forward 60 years. That exact same booming port of Muynak, the canneries are now just skeletons of rust and broken glass. The docks lead absolutely nowhere. Instead of water, there's this flat plain of cracked earth and wind-sculpted sand, where a dozen ships lie stranded, rusted to the color of dried blood. Camels literally walk between their hulls.
To reach the nearest water from those very same docks today, you would have to get in a vehicle and drive for 2 straight hours. The shoreline has retreated an astonishing 100 kilometers north. You're forced to cross what is now the youngest desert on Earth, just to touch a single wave.
The motive for this massive ecological murder really boils down to a single crop: white gold. That was the Soviet Union's official term for cotton. In the years following Stalin's death, the Soviet economy desperately needed cotton for military uniforms, cellulose for explosives, and honestly, just hard currency for global trade. So planners looked at the dry, sun-blasted plains of Central Asia, stretching across Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Kazakhstan, and decided they were going to force the desert to bloom.
So the crucial point is the sheer math of this crop, which is honestly brutal. Cotton is incredibly thirsty. It takes nearly 10,000 liters of water to produce just a single bale. Think about that for a second. 10,000 liters. And they were attempting to grow this on an unfathomably massive scale right in the middle of an arid desert environment.
But, you see, Central Asia had a secret weapon. 2 ancient, mighty rivers, the Amu Darya and the Sur Darya, flowed straight through the dust, delivering 50 cubic kilometers of fresh water annually right into the Aral Sea. Planners with slide rules mapped out a system to completely siphon off these rivers. They were trading an ancient sea for sprawling fields of white. And here's the kicker. They knew exactly what would happen. Soviet hydrologists warned, right there on paper, that the Aral Sea would dry up within 50 years. But the official position from senior planners was that this ancient sea was simply, and this is a direct quote, a mistake of nature. Sure, it was beautiful, but to them it was entirely useless to the planned economy. The Politburo fully calculated the sea's destruction as a worthwhile trade.
Now, here is the absolute obscenity of the execution. The murder weapon was a vast web of canals, like the 1,375-kilometer Karakum Canal. But these weren't modern concrete-lined aqueducts. No, they were literally just trenches dug raw into the desert sand. Because of that, up to 50% of the diverted river water never even reached a cotton plant. It just seeped right back into the ground, evaporated into the sky, or pooled into completely useless salt marshes. Literally billions of tons of water just thrown away every single year.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the collapse happened faster than even the most vocal pessimists predicted. In 1960, the sea is whole. By 1987, the water drops so violently the sea snaps into 2 separate bodies, the north and south. By 2000, the south fractures again into eastern and western lobes. And by 2007, 90% of the water is completely gone, evaporated into the sky, leaving behind a vast white grave of salt and sediment.
What was left behind was the Aral Sea, the youngest desert on Earth. But wait, this wasn't just dry sand. For decades, the upstream cotton fields were drenched in millions of tons of synthetic fertilizers, DDT, and chemical defoliants. All of that toxic runoff washed down the rivers and settled right into the lakebed. So when the water evaporated, the Aral Sea didn't just become a desert, it became a 60,000 square kilometer deadly toxic chemical sink, just sitting exposed on the surface waiting for the wind to blow. And when those dust storms arrive, which happens up to 70 times a year, they lift that lethal chemistry straight into the atmosphere. The resulting health metrics are absolutely staggering. In the 1990s, infant mortality in the region spiked to 75 per 1,000 live births. Tuberculosis rates jumped to 4 times the regional average, and esophageal cancer skyrocketed to 7 times the global norm. The toxic dust literally coats the lungs of everyone breathing the air around the former sea. It got so bad that mothers couldn't even safely nurse because their breast milk carried measurable concentrations of pesticides.
No, what's really interesting here is the sheer, almost comical absurdity of the cover-up. As the local fish completely died off by 1980, Soviet authorities desperately wanted to pretend the industry was still thriving. So they actually shipped frozen fish from the Baltic Sea, literally 3,000 kilometers away across an entire continent, just so the cannery workers sitting in this newly manufactured desert had something to process. It's just wild. Today, the map is a tale of 2 vastly different realities. The North Aral holds a tiny fraction of hope. In 2005, Kazakhstan built a 13-kilometer earthen dam that trapped the remaining river flow, raising water levels just enough to bring some hardy fish and a few fishermen back to the region. But the South Aral, that massive basin in Uzbekistan, is utterly abandoned. It remains a deeply polluted, hypersaline puddle, entirely sacrificed because the fields upstream still demand their white gold.
When you look at the raw arithmetic of this, it is profoundly chilling. Think about it. A planetary feature that endured for 5.5 million years, surviving shifting ice ages, massive meteorite strikes, and the rise and fall of entire ancient empires, it was completely eradicated in just one single human lifetime, simply because a few men with maps decided a sea was a mistake.
The cotton was harvested, the metals were pinned, the plans were filed, and somewhere out on the Aral Sea tonight, where camels pick their way past the rust-red ribs of trawlers, the wind picks up a fistful of poisoned salt and carries it into the lungs of a child who was born long after the last fish died.